Hello and welcome to Truth Out Loud, where we sift through the world's weirdness so you don't have to. Now, I know what you're thinking. Government conspiracies, isn't that just the domain of tinfoil hat enthusiasts and that one uncle who always brings up Area 51 at Thanksgiving? Well, hold on to your hats, folks, because today we're diving headfirst into the murky depths of government secrecy, where the line between fact and fiction gets blurrier than a politician's promise during an election year. Welcome to our video where we uncover some of the most shocking government secrets that were once dismissed as conspiracy theories, but turned out to be true. From mind control experiments to secret wars, let's dive into these jaw-dropping revelations. Our first stop on this delightful trip down memory lane is MKUltra. Now, you might be thinking MKUltra sounds like a discount energy drink. And you wouldn't be entirely wrong. Except instead of giving you a sugar rush, this CIA program aimed to control your mind. That's right, from the 1950s onward, the CIA was secretly dosing unsuspecting Americans with LSD, all in the name of, well, who knows what. The official line was that they were trying to develop mind control techniques for use against the Soviets. But let's be honest, is anyone really surprised that a government agency with intelligence in its name was experimenting with things that sound like they came straight out of a science fiction novel? And the best part, when word of these shady shenanigans finally got out, the CIA conveniently destroyed most of the MKUltra files. Because what better way to maintain public trust than by making sure no one can ever find out what you were up to? Next up, we have the Tuskegee syphilis study, and buckle up, folks, because this one is a real doozy. For 40 years, from 1932 to 1972, the U.S. Public Health Service decided it would be a great idea to study the effects of untreated syphilis on African-American men, for science. The catch? They didn't tell the men they had syphilis, instead claiming they were being treated for bad blood. Oh, and they also didn't actually treat them for syphilis, even after penicillin became a readily available treatment in the 1940s. This wasn't just unethical, it was downright monstrous. It's a stark reminder that sometimes the most terrifying monsters aren't hiding under the bed or lurking in the shadows, but are wearing lab coats and carrying clipboards. Remember that time you drunkenly ordered a pizza at 3 a.m. and swore you'd never speak of it again? Well, guess what? The NSA probably remembers. In 2013, our old pal Edward Snowden blew the whistle on the NSA's massive surveillance program, confirming what many had long suspected. Big Brother is real, and he's got excellent Wi-Fi. Turns out, the government has been collecting our phone records, emails, and even our internet browsing history, all without our knowledge or consent. Now, they claim it's all in the name of national security, but it does make you wonder, doesn't it? Are we really safer when the government knows what kind of cat videos we watch on YouTube, or are they just compiling blackmail material for a rainy day? Chapter 4. COINTELPRO, the FBI's crusade against dissent. Ever feel like the government just doesn't want you to express your opinion? Well, back in the good old days of the 1950s to the 1970s, the FBI took that sentiment to a whole new level with COINTELPRO. This wasn't just your average government surveillance program. This was full-blown political warfare. We're talking infiltrating and disrupting civil rights groups, smearing activists with false propaganda, and even instigating violence to discredit entire movements. It's enough to make you wonder, if the government is willing to go to such lengths to silence dissent, what else are they capable of? Chapter 5. Operation Paperclip, from Nazis to NASA. After World War II, the US government was faced with a dilemma: what to do with all those brilliant Nazi scientists. I mean, they were Nazis, sure, but they were also really good at building rockets and other cool stuff. So, in a move that could only be described as questionable at best, the US government decided to offer them a sweet deal. Come work for us, and we'll look the other way on that whole committing war crimes thing. Thus, Operation Paperclip was born. Thousands of German scientists, engineers, and technicians were brought to the US, where they played a key role in developing everything from the space program to the military-industrial complex. Which begs the question, what's more American than using former Nazis to win the Cold War? Title: Operation Northwood's False Flags and Fabricated Wars. Remember that time the US government totally didn't consider staging a fake terrorist attack to justify invading Cuba? Oh wait, they totally did. In 1962, the Joint Chiefs of Staff presented a plan to President Kennedy that would have made even Machiavelli blush. The plan, codenamed Operation Northwoods, called for a series of false flag operations, including sinking U.S. ships, hijacking planes, and even simulating attacks on U.S. soil, all to drum up public support for a war with Cuba. Thankfully, Kennedy had the good sense to reject the plan, proving that even in the midst of the Cold War, cooler heads could occasionally prevail. Chapter 7, the Iran-Contra affair: arms deals, hostages, and a whole lot of scandal. The 1980s, a time of big hair, shoulder pads, and apparently shady arms, deals with sworn enemies. The Iran-Contra affair was like a soap opera written by someone who'd been mainlining conspiracy theories. It involved senior U.S. officials secretly selling arms to Iran, which was under an arms embargo, by the way, and then using the profits to fund the Contras, a right-wing rebel group in Nicaragua. It was a tangled web of lies, deceit, and geopolitical maneuvering that would have made even the most seasoned diplomat's head spin. And it proved once again that when it comes to foreign policy, the US government plays by its own set of rules. Operation Gladio: NATO's secret armies. The Cold War was a time of paranoia and suspicion, when the threat of nuclear annihilation hung over the world like a bad hangover. So it's not entirely surprising that NATO decided to create a network of secret armies across Europe, just in case the Soviets ever got any funny ideas. These armies, known as stay-behind forces, were trained in guerrilla warfare and sabotage, and were supposedly there to resist a Soviet invasion. Of course, the existence of these secret armies wasn't exactly public knowledge. In fact, it wasn't until the 1990s that the truth about Operation Gladio finally came to light, sending shockwaves through Europe and raising serious questions about NATO's commitment to democracy. Chapter 9. Project Artichoke: the CIA's foray into mind control. Again, before there was MKUltra, there was Project Artichoke. Because apparently one CIA mind control program just wasn't enough. This early effort focused on interrogation techniques and mind control, and involved, you guessed it, drugs and hypnosis. Think of it as MKUltra's slightly less glamorous older sibling. The goal was to create truth serums and techniques for manipulating people's memories. And while the project was officially discontinued in the mid-1950s, it laid the groundwork for MKUltra and other, even more disturbing programs to come. Chapter 10. The Tuskegee Study: a betrayal of trust. We've already talked about the Tuskegee syphilis study, but it's worth revisiting this horrific chapter in American history. For 40 years, the U.S. Public Health Service deliberately allowed hundreds of black men to suffer and die from syphilis, all in the name of scientific research. These men were denied treatment, even after penicillin became widely available, and were lied to about their condition. The study wasn't just unethical. It was a racist abomination that left a lasting stain on the medical profession and the U.S. government. Chapter 11. Operation Chaos: the FBI versus the anti-war movement. The Vietnam War was a deeply divisive conflict that sparked widespread protests across the United States. And how did the FBI respond to this outpouring of dissent? By launching a massive surveillance and disruption campaign known as Operation Chaos. From the late 1960s to the early 1970s, the FBI infiltrated anti-war groups, spied on activists, and spread disinformation in an attempt to discredit the movement. It was a blatant attack on free speech and a chilling reminder that the government doesn't always appreciate it when citizens question its authority. Chapter 12. The Gulf of Tonkin Incident: the lie that launched a war. In August 1964, the U.S. government claimed that North Vietnamese torpedo boats had attacked U.S. destroyers in the Gulf of Tonkin. This incident was used to justify a massive escalation of U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War. There's just one problem. The second attack, which served as the primary justification for war, probably never happened. Declassified documents have since revealed that the U.S. government deliberately misled the public about the incident, using it as a pretext for a war they already wanted to fight. Chapter 13. Operation Condor: State Terror in South America. Operation Condor sounds like the name of a rejected James Bond film, but unfortunately, the reality was far more sinister. This covert operation, which took place in the 1970s and 1980s, involved the intelligence agencies of several South American dictatorships, with the backing of the US government, working together to hunt down and eliminate political opponents. We're talking assassinations, torture, and forced disappearances, all carried out with the tacit approval of Uncle Sam. Operation Condor was a brutal campaign of state terror, and its legacy continues to haunt Latin America to this day. Chapter 14. The Manhattan Project. The biggest secret of World War II. Okay, so this one isn't exactly a conspiracy theory. It's one of the most well-known scientific endeavors in human history. But the Manhattan Project, which produced the first atomic bombs, was shrouded in secrecy during World War II. The project involved thousands of scientists and engineers working in secret labs across the country, racing against time to develop a weapon that would change the course of history. And while the existence of the Manhattan Project was eventually revealed to the public, the ethical implications of the atomic bomb continue to be debated to this day. Chapter 15. The Iran Hostage Crisis, a deal with the devil. The Iran hostage crisis was a defining event of the late 1970s, with 52 American diplomats and citizens held hostage in Iran for 444 days. But what if I told you that the crisis might have dragged on because of a secret deal between the Reagan campaign and the Iranian government? The theory goes that the Reagan team negotiated with Iran to delay the release of the hostages until after the 1980 election, ensuring that President Carter wouldn't get a last-minute boost from a foreign policy victory. While the full extent of the alleged deal remains murky, the Iran-Contra affair, which involves some of the same players, lends credence to the theory that something fishy might have been going on. Chapter 16. The Philadelphia Experiment. Science fiction or government cover-up? The story of the Philadelphia Experiment sounds like something straight out of a science fiction novel. According to legend, the U.S. Navy conducted a secret experiment in 1943 that involved cloaking a destroyer, the USS Eldridge, using electromagnetic fields. The experiment supposedly went horribly wrong, teleporting the ship and its crew to another dimension, or maybe just making them invisible, depending on which version of the story you believe. While the official stance is that the Philadelphia Experiment is nothing more than an urban legend, the persistence of the story, combined with the Navy's somewhat cagey responses to inquiries, has kept the conspiracy theories alive and well. Chapter 17. Project Blue Book. The truth is out there, maybe. From 1952 to 1969, the U.S. Air Force investigated UFO sightings under a program called Project Blue Book. While the Air Force concluded that most of the sightings could be explained as natural phenomena or misidentified aircraft, there were a handful of cases that they couldn't quite explain. These unexplained sightings, combined with the government's general reluctance to discuss the topic of UFOs, have fueled countless conspiracy theories about what the government really knows about extraterrestrial life. Are we alone in the universe? The government isn't saying, but Project Blue Book suggests that the truth might be out there. Chapter 18. Agent Orange, a toxic legacy. During the Vietnam War, the U.S. military sprayed millions of gallons of herbicides over Vietnam in an attempt to defoliate the jungle and deny cover to the enemy. One of these herbicides, Agent Orange, contained a highly toxic chemical called dioxin, which has been linked to a wide range of health problems, including cancer, birth defects, and other serious illnesses. The U.S. government initially downplayed the risks of Agent Orange exposure, but mounting evidence of its devastating effects eventually forced them to acknowledge the problem. Chapter 19. The Secret War in Laos, America's Hidden Conflict. While the Vietnam War raged on, a secret war was being fought in neighboring Laos. From the early 1960s to 1973, the U.S. government secretly bombed Laos, targeting North Vietnamese supply routes and supporting Laotian anti-communist forces. The bombing campaign was incredibly destructive, killing thousands of Laotian civilians and displacing countless others. The secret war in Laos is a dark chapter in U.S. military history, and its legacy continues to affect the Lao people to this day. Chapter 20. Warrantless wiretapping, Big Brother is watching and listening. In the wake of the 9/11 attacks, the Bush administration authorized the National Security Agency, or NSA, to conduct warrantless wiretapping of American citizens' phone calls and emails. This massive surveillance program, which operated in secret for years, was a blatant violation of the Fourth Amendment, which protects Americans from unreasonable searches and seizures. The revelation of the NSA's warrantless wiretapping program sparked outrage and debate about the balance between national security and civil liberties. Chapter 21. The Church Committee Reports, Exposing Government Abuses. In the mid-1970s, a Senate committee led by Senator Frank Church investigated abuses by the CIA, FBI, NSA, and IRS. The committee's findings were shocking, revealing a pattern of government overreach, illegal surveillance, and covert operations that targeted American citizens. The Church Committee's work led to reforms and increased oversight of the intelligence community. But many argue that the government continues to operate in the shadows, often exceeding its authority in the name of national security. Operation Gladio, NATO's network of secret armies in Europe, was supposed to be a Cold War relic, but some believe that a similar program, sometimes referred to as Operation USA or Operation Gladio B, continued to operate long after the fall of the Soviet Union. Details about this alleged program are scarce, but it's believed to have involved covert operations, paramilitary groups, and possibly even false flag attacks. Whether Operation USAY was a real program or merely a conspiracy theory, it highlights the enduring fascination with the idea of secret government operations and the possibility that some secrets are too dangerous to stay buried. Chapter 23. Drones used for domestic surveillance. The eyes in the sky. Drones, those unmanned aerial vehicles that were once the stuff of science fiction, are now a reality of modern warfare. But increasingly, drones are being used for another purpose: domestic surveillance. Law enforcement agencies across the United States are using drones to monitor protests, track suspects, and gather evidence, while law enforcement officials argue that drones are valuable tools for fighting crime. Privacy advocates worry that their use could lead to a future where the skies are constantly watched by unmanned eyes. Chapter 24. FBI infiltration of civil rights groups, sowing discord and distrust. During the civil rights movement, the FBI engaged in a systematic campaign to disrupt and discredit civil rights groups, including the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and the Black Panther Party. FBI agents infiltrated these groups, spread false rumors, and even instigated violence in an attempt to sow discord and undermine their efforts. The FBI's actions were a betrayal of its mission to uphold the law and a shameful chapter in the agency's history. Chapter 25. Chemical spraying and weather modification. Playing God with the environment. From spraying Agent Orange in Vietnam to experimenting with cloud seeding to control rainfall, the US government has a long history of manipulating the environment for military and other purposes. While some of these programs were public knowledge, others were conducted in secret, leading to speculation about what other experiments the government might be conducting behind closed doors. The idea of the government controlling the weather might sound like science fiction, but the reality is that humans have long sought to control the forces of nature, often with unintended and potentially catastrophic consequences. So there you have it, folks. A whirlwind tour of some of the most shocking government secrets that turned out to be true. From mind control experiments to secret wars to mass surveillance, the truth is often stranger and more disturbing than fiction. These revelations show that sometimes what we dismiss as conspiracy theories can turn out to be true.